You're listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between running and positive mental health. We do this by talking to runners from all walks of life who generously share their experiences with us. So you don't miss an episode, I've created an email list for you to join. Check the show notes for more details. Without further ado, I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Today on the podcast, we have another incredible guest, running coach and professional runner, Sim Brick. Sim's journey from growing up in a large family to overcoming personal challenges through running is truly inspiring. In this episode, Sim shares how she battled an eating disorder and mental health issues, and how running became a crucial part of her recovery. She talks about completing her first marathon, raising funds for the Butterfly Foundation, and finding a supportive community in the Crosby crew, all while completing a uni degree. Sim's story is about resilience, transformation, and the healing power of running. Get ready to be moved and motivated by her journey. Let's dive into this conversation with Sim. Enjoy. Today on the podcast, I am excited, as I always am, to make a new friend. Hello, Sim Brick. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and likewise, new friends, more friends the better.
I know, especially when we have this thing in common called running. We can have a chat about it. It's always a good place to start, isn't it?
It really is. Great conversation starter.
No, I've had a couple of people refer you to get on, at least two, maybe three actually, who said I needed to get you on. So I'm so happy that you've agreed to jump on. So thank you.
I feel special that people have recommended me. It means they are, especially if one of them was Tim, my coach. It means you can't be quite too sick of my voice, as he tells me he is often.
Yeah, he's not telling the truth. I'm sure he'll listen to this podcast so he can listen to your voice even more.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Let's start, Sim, with where you grew up. Tell me a bit about your childhood.
I was born in Perth, but I moved from Perth to Melbourne when I was, I think, 4. So only my very early years were in Perth before. Yeah. Everything else has been from Melbourne, southeast suburbs along the bay.
Oh, beautiful. I was born in Victoria, but then moved to King Island.
Oh, wow.
So it's a little bit different. But yeah, think of Melbourne anyway as my birthplace and home. Most of my family came from there.
Yeah, no.
Do you have children? Do you have siblings? Did you grow up with brothers and sisters?
Yeah. A lot of them. I'm one of 7. So
no.
Yeah. I'm the second youngest of 7, surrounded by, I've got 2 sisters, but they're 10 and 11 years older than me. And then all the ones surrounding me are boys. So it's me and the boys is what I kind of grew up with.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Big family.
That's a big family. Like I'm one of 4 and I've had 5 children of my own, but 7, that's like another level up.
Oh, yeah. It's rent a crowd anytime you have any sort of family function. And obviously now being the second youngest, the eldest 4 are married with kids of their own. So I'm an auntie like 12 times over. I think my eldest sister just met a new partner with another 6 in there too. So maybe 18 by now.
Oh, my God.
There's a lot of kids around. There's a lot of it's never boring, that's for sure.
I love that. It's actually quite delightful, really. Like, because I've obviously been the Tarago family. For so very, very long. And I can even remember, being the mum of all those kids, there were people who would say, I really want to invite you around for dinner, but I just have no idea how to feed that many people. Just go.
Yeah, I think I did. Mum had us all trained pretty well because I think all of us knew at least how to make like tuna sauce and pasta for about 9 of us by the time we were probably 7 or 8 ourselves. So she definitely had us trained well early on to be, everyone had their job around the house, and it was all hands on deck to make sure everything sort of ran in some form of organized fashion. I'm not sure if it felt that organized, but I honestly, when I think back on my childhood, I have no idea how my mum did it, because I was
Mm.
the kid that all of us, it felt like, were the kids that we're at sport before and after school most days, every weekend. And it was
Wow.
how mum got to all the soccer games, all the footy games, all that. Like everything was always moving, because I would go from my own sporting thing to my brother's footy game to the other brother's footy game, back to my own sporting thing. And yeah, it was
Amazing.
definitely I have no idea how she did it, but we had two 10-seater vans that got us, and it felt like half the footy team or soccer team around the place. So
I do.
20 seats in two vans.
Yeah, I reckon the 8 seats in the Tarago, yeah, they were often had other kids. There was never spare seats. Like you said, you often, because you already had a lot of children around, then your kids'
Yeah.
friends, it was easy for you to just add a couple more, whatever.
Oh, it
As
was so good if mum was just taking me somewhere and I'm like, hey, yeah, but me and my 7 friends, we can all jump in the car. Like it's super easy when it comes down to that. But and then definitely we've got family up in Queensland. So there was times that we had all 7 of us kids plus 2 parents plus enough luggage for a 2-week trip to Queensland in a car driving for 2 days straight.
Oh,
That
wow.
that happened every year, and it was mayhem.
I've done that drive a few times, but not with that many.
Yeah, not a good idea, especially when half the kids get car sick.
Oh my
We got good
God.
at playing car cricket, but trying to keep us all in control from the front of the van. Yeah.
What a wonderful childhood you had. That just sounds awesome. Like from
Oh
afar,
yeah.
probably in the middle of it sometimes. There were moments, but from afar, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Definitely it's highs and lows, perks and downfalls of everything.
So I did, I usually ask about, sporting stuff in your childhood. It sounded like you guys were all pretty sporty.
Yeah, I was very much like everyone was. Mum and dad themselves are like still into now their 60s, are still very active, but I was very much a team sports kind of person. I did
Mhm.
do like I was a kid that probably tried everything. The give me softball, give me surf life saving. I was doing swimming. I was doing tennis. I was doing basketball, and then soccer. Like I played everything. Basketball was my first love, and then fell out of love with that when being. This is probably one of the downfalls of a big family, getting up to sort of rep level basketball, but I wasn't able to actually join the team because I couldn't get to the games all around the state because
Oh,
busy family, and financial. Like once you get
yeah.
to a certain level, everything gets a bit harder for the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
But then fell in love with soccer. But the one thing I definitely did not love was running. Running, I was definitely grew up as the kid where running was the punishment for not getting the basketball and not kicking the ball right, talking too much at training. Like
Yeah.
running was punishment. I did do one one cross country race in primary school that I entered because I figured I could get some time off school, and there was a couple of trainings before schools and stuff, and kept me busy. But then I get to the cross country race, and I was used to being quite good at ball sports and basketball and tennis and things, and I was always very competitive and wanted to be one of the best out there. But
Yeah.
getting 1K into this, I think it was probably only a 2K cross country course, and I'm almost last. So I faked a rolled ankle and got stretchered off the course. Didn't even finish. It was great.
Like when I was at school, we had to go in cross
My
country.
little
Did you have to go in the cross country? Like after that?
hmm?
Like in
No,
your
no, not at
schools are
all.
different?
No, we had the athletics carnivals and things that you had to do, obviously, the schoolhouse carnivals and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But from memory, like that was the only cross country race as a kid that I remember ever doing. And I wasn't going back anytime soon because I didn't like getting beaten. Um, and yeah, it definitely endurance running, those sorts of things was not my forte. I loved just the ball sports.
Can you remember what you thought about the shorter distances, like in the carnivals each year?
Oh, I loved the 100 meter. I
Okay.
definitely loved sort of the sprinting, just get
Yeah.
me to the other end as fast as I can kind of ones. Did not mind that. And I loved discus in
Yeah.
in Little Lass. Discus and the 100 meter sprint were about my limit. And that was purely because I still remember thinking as a little kid, like just pretend there's a basketball at the other end of the race and you're
Oh,
sprinting after basketball. um, so yeah, was not in a running mindset at all.
Are you very tall?
Not
It's hard to
well,
tell
I'm
on
not
Zoom.
short. I'm 5'7". I'm 5'7", so what's that,
Okay.
170
Yeah.
centimeters? So
Yeah.
like I'm not short,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I would be tall enough to actually have made it anywhere in basketball.
I'm five
I
foot six
definitely
and a
wanted
half.
to be the next Lauren Jackson, but I think I stopped growing at about 12.
I have a niece who's
So super tall as a kid.
I have a niece who is a professional basketballer. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
She's pretty tall. She's six
Very
four.
jealous.
She's tall. So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not that tall.
uh, and her partner's like six. He's 6'8", I think. So they're gonna have tall
Wow.
kids. Because he's
They
also a
are.
basketball. Yeah. Anyway, so
Wow.
they're both policemen now, actually. Interesting. Yeah.
Oh.
They moved on from professional basketball. Um, what did you do when you left school? Like when you left high school, grade 10, grade
Yeah.
11, 12? What
Yeah,
happened?
year 11, year 12. Yeah, look, my life after high school did not go in any way that you would expect for
Mm,
any life, really. But I took a gap year. So I was going to go to uni and I actually first entered into uni. I got a spot in a double degree of nursing and paramedicine.
yeah.
Um, Deferred that one. I did also have a very brief moment where I almost joined the army. I went through all the intake and
Oh,
everything for
wow.
that gap year when they were doing all those like army gap year things. And that was definitely a path not taken because, yeah, I did all the meetings, all the intake. And then it got to the point where you're at the meeting with them in the room and they offer you a certain position within the army based on like an position kind of thing. And I went, oh, crap, I don't actually want to do this. Sorry. um, yeah, that was a few of where my mind was going. But what ended up happening was took a gap year, deferred that uni degree, and decided to just try and earn some money and got
Yep.
a full-time job as a waitress,
Yep.
doing all the seemingly normal life things.
Yeah.
But I suppose, I wasn't your typical teenager. I also wasn't your like typical young kid. So once I'd lost the structure of
Mm,
school actually being sort of the thing I could hold on to get me through the days and navigating the world
mm,
around me, I suppose, it was a very safe spot to be in a way because it gave you purpose and direction every day.
yep.
So then once I was in that full time, and obviously had just turned 18. I was full time waitress. I was out 4 or 5 nights of the week until
Yep.
1 a.m. and then I'd be working the other nights until midnight. Like it was a very different lifestyle. And I was not very active at all at that point in time. I'd given up on most sports. So I had a very only a few months there, but a very brief period of being the waitress party girl.
Yep.
And then in that gap year, I also had this whole idea of I was going to try and get fit because I grew up probably like completely undiagnosed, but I could guarantee, and well, I've since been diagnosed afterwards, that I would have had polycystic ovarian syndrome. Runs in my family, very
Yeah.
common. But then when I went through puberty, it's sort of pretty early, actually, like 10 years old or so.
Yeah.
I was very much a bigger child. So I think I was about 80 kilos by the time I was 11 or so, and
Oh,
um,
gosh.
only going to get bigger from there. So when I did leave school and start that waitress job, I was 18 and about 100 kilos by that point.
Oh, wow.
So not small. And so I was also in the mind of going, well, I'm going to try and get fit, try and get healthy. I had asthma, so I had doctors sort of telling me, hey, you this is something you need to pay attention to, and it's probably in your best interest to lose some weight. And
Hmm.
me being me and my sort of, I have a very scientific brain, a very addictive personality brain, and a very sort of like, ADHD, there's all sorts of
Yep.
things going on in there. So then once I decided to get fit, I was typical me all in on the getting fit side of things. And in a teenage malfunctioning brain, decided to do that all the wrong ways by essentially for a very long time just stopping eating. Um,
Oh, one of those.
and yeah, once yeah,
Ouch.
so and once you're malnourished, it's
Mm,
very hard to get a malfunctioning brain functioning again. So that essentially landed me in by the time like by September of that gap year,
hmm.
August, September of that gap year, well, to be fair, by July, I'd already, my two best friends at the time had marched me to the doctors and then to a psychologist who was an eating disorder specialist. And then
Yeah.
by September, I was in hospital. By the next, essentially that like it's a period of my life, those next few months that like I sort of remember and sort
Yeah.
of don't remember.
Yeah.
My family very much stepped in.
Mhm.
Like I went from not being able to make it up the stairs due to asthma and being out of breath to not being able to make it up the stairs because medically I wasn't stable enough to. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, didn't do that one by
Yeah.
halves. And so yeah, once I'd sort of gotten to the end of that gap year and it was essentially meant to be the period of time where I was looking at going back into uni. Instead, I was in a outpatient, a day program for an intensive day program for eating disorders, where I spent the next 8 months. So I wasn't even able to start uni again by that point. So that all got put on the back burner, and the next 3 years of my life, hang on, something like that. Honestly,
Mhm.
it's a bit of a blur. But once I'd recovered from the eating disorder physically, at least, it's
Yeah.
always a very, very long journey mentally.
Mm.
So once I was out of that treatment facility, there's this so eating disorders for the most part, and this is just my experience from both myself and I have a lot of friends that have
Yeah.
obviously struggled with similar things because you get meet so many along the way. They're almost always like they're not the problem in themselves. They're a
Mhm.
symptom of much
That's
deeper
other
things
stuff.
going on
Mhm.
and much deeper problems. It's like we've all got these mental burdens that we carry, and some people
Mhm.
may turn to drugs, some may turn to alcohol. I turn to the feeling of being empty. Like
Yeah.
it's a different way of going about very similar things.
Mm.
So once I was recovered from that and no longer had sort of the eating disorder as a coping mechanism, I thought life was going to get real good, and it got even worse.
Oh, no.
So
Oh.
it was not a fun period again after that. I honestly, I hats off to everyone around me that stuck around. Not many friends stuck around, but the few that did are those sort of the pearls in the rough that get you through. And then yeah, my family and my mum especially, she was quitting her work to become my full-time carer.
Wow.
I think of the next 2 years, I probably spent it like a solid year of it or more in psych hospitals. No longer
Yeah.
eating disorder treatment. I was for what the program that I'd been in for 8 months actually did an incredibly good job of ingraining that not being a coping strategy that I could turn to anymore, but it
Yeah.
still meant that I was sort of left treading water, trying to figure out how
Dealing
to
with
deal with
them.
life. And
Yeah.
my brain being my brain that it is, it has its intricacies.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially the next sort of 2 years, 3 years was in and out of hospitals, in and out of different treatments, trying all the different antipsychotics, antidepressants, like it was medication spirals. And I was spent a long time sort of what you would probably call chemically sedated by
Wow.
medications, and
Yeah.
was unable to do much in life. There was a
Mhm.
long period there where my days were coloring in, watching movies, or lying in bed. Um, so yeah, couldn't go to uni, couldn't study, couldn't do anything really.
Yeah.
So I was quite obviously accomplished in my studies and everything before all this happened. So it was a bit of a shock to go from quite accomplished in life to people saying you could go do anything, be anything, to sort of being like sitting in front of doctors that were telling
Yeah.
me that the rest of my life was going to look like I was institutionalized and reliant on medications and all sorts of things to get me through each day. So
Wow.
yeah, it was an interesting period, like rough one, but yeah, it all sort of eventually we got to places that I could actually anytime someone's in these sort of mental health crisis modes, I feel like it's this whole merry-go-round of trying to get the person into a spot where you can even start to do the work,
Yeah.
which is where the treatments, where the medications and everything come into play. It's like they're the things that allow you to actually put in the work behind the scenes. And because for a long time I couldn't engage in therapy, I couldn't engage in anything to do with life or getting myself better. Every day was a battle to survive. So eventually I had electroconvulsive therapy,
Gosh.
ECT. So that's That's yeah, they induce a seizure. And I still to this day, I just love the fact or am blown away by the fact that no one knows how it works. They just know that it works. It's
I
just
think
this,
I'm sure you understand there's a lot of stuff in medical science and especially related to the human
oh yeah,
body. We have no idea.
no idea,
Um,
100%. Yeah, no idea how it works. They just know that it kind of resets the brain. It definitely comes with its like downfalls and
mm,
side effects. The think paper you have to sign for consent is all quite scary. Of you can lose your memory, all these sorts of things can happen. But and yeah, it was a very scary process. But at the same time, it definitely gave me the ability to sort of re-engage in a few things and
mm,
not have as many medications, not be so reliant
yeah.
on sleeping pills and all sorts of things. So over a 2 year period, I think I had 3 rounds of that. Well, the second 2 rounds, I actually managed to get myself into some pretty high level research studies into
Mhm.
magnetic seizure therapy. So it's the exact same thing, but they induce the seizures with magnets instead of electricity. And it
Wow.
has less of a memory side effect, which was very much welcome. And that was, again, like a lot of the things along the way for my recovery journey, I consider myself incredibly lucky for
Mm.
because that just happened to be a sort of very high level research study going on in Melbourne where I live at a hospital
Yeah.
right near where I live.
Yeah.
And then
That's
yeah, it's
I
just,
love
there's a
those
lot of,
coincidences.
well, yeah, like everything, a lot of the things along the way was, yeah, happening to be near good private
Mhm.
hospitals, happening to be near in the catchment area for the eating disorder program I was in. Like, it's pretty crazy looking back how many of those little coincidences were there that enabled me to actually, and I was obviously searching for them. Went through a few periods, well, a couple years there where everything was kind of being done for me, but once I had found my feet again a little bit, I sort of found running all along this little journey there somewhere in the middle of it all. Um, and yeah, once I'd sort of found my feet again, like I went searching for those opportunities to go, well, life is better than it was, but it's still not good. So
Yeah.
how do I navigate this to actually get to a point where I can be who I want to be and actually do things in life again that isn't so reliant on those around me. So yeah, it's a very humbling process
Wow.
to go through.
Because it sounds like, I
but
mean, just not to paraphrase anything that you said, but from your schooling sort of time when you're in that structure and, you were doing sport, you were doing well academically, the future looked bright to, and being, very aware of everything and obviously really, really with it. And then to have, that happen for the next few years, that
yeah,
must have
yeah.
been
Well, I
so
suppose
hard to look at it, like the polar
yeah.
opposites, really. Of,
I think it was polar opposites externally, but obviously
yeah,
none of this happened completely out of the blue internally.
yeah.
So as much as I was holding it together really well, and obviously I was incredibly high functioning and doing all the things I knew I should be doing,
Yeah.
but from a very young age, I was not. I kind of knew I was not your typical, and I had a lot of my own little struggles to fit in or just to figure
Hmm.
out the world. And I probably, looking back, had my first bout of major depression when I was about 13,
Okay.
14.
Yeah.
Um, so but the like sport and the soccer field or the basketball court or any of those things was where I felt most myself and I felt
Hmm.
most able to actually function in life.
Yeah.
And obviously, I poured myself into my study. So as long as I had something to focus on, I was almost like I was able to distract
Yeah.
um, from everything else going on. And so, but yeah, I never like it is interesting because I feel incredibly blessed looking back on my childhood and everything of I know the privilege I've got. I've seen underprivileged and I've seen how hard this world can be on people. And I am 100% aware of how many privileges I had growing up, but also for my experience of it internally, I was never really having an easy time of it
Yeah.
from the time I was very young. So yeah, it's like none of it came out of the blue for me. I'm not sure. I'm
Mm.
pretty sure it probably came a lot more out of the blue for a lot of the people around me.
Yeah.
Um, but the writing was on the wall from a very young age. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of everything coming to a head that I could no longer control myself, which I
Yeah.
tried to hide it for a very long time, as
Yeah.
all teenagers will. But eventually it got to a point where I had to sort of just completely let go, and everything was sort of thrust upon me that the whole world knew my whole world knew all
Yeah.
of a sudden. Couldn't hide at that point. And then at that point, you've got to, I suppose, lean on people a lot more than you ever thought you would have to.
Yeah.
So
You said that running popped up in there in some way. Was it like, did someone say, "Oh, you should try running as well," or was it just something that you decided to do?
no, no. So obviously, like I had a very brief rendezvous with running in the early stages of my eating disorder, like that when I was
Yeah.
initially trying to lose some weight.
Hmm.
But that was maybe a month or so long, because once I'd lost even just a little bit of weight, I kind of realized that running made me hungry, and I
Mm.
didn't like being hungry, and so I got rid of the running because
Wow.
then I would be less hungry and I could eat less. Like
Okay.
it wasn't thankfully,
Mm.
I'm very thankful for this. Running itself wasn't a huge part of my eating disorder.
Yeah.
It was only that very, very
Mhm.
early stage, because everyone that's trying to lose weight runs, right? That's what the
I was
18-year-old me
yep.
thought.
Yes.
Um, so then all throughout my treatment and all throughout that 8-month period, especially in the treatment center, exercise of any kind was not allowed.
Oh, wow.
So I was allowed to go for supervised walks, or
Mm.
when I was medically stable. Once you're medically stable, obviously,
Yep.
um, like mum could come for walks with me and those sorts of things. Like that was, but it was all very heavily supervised. And then when I re-entered society, in a way, I was able to go back to team sports like basketball,
Mm.
but again, heavily supervised to
Mm.
make sure nothing got out of hand on those fronts, and it was never became a coping mechanism, which I hated the reins at the time that I was
Yeah.
put on, but now I'm very thankful looking back, because I
Yeah.
was never even given an opportunity for any of it to become a compensatory mechanism for
Yeah.
eating. So that was good. But I actually don't know exactly when I started running properly, but I do remember it's my first run I remember was
Yeah.
kind of from hospital. Um, so
Running
I
away.
was, yes,
Oh, yeah.
genuinely, yes. Yeah, so I just remember being allowed out on a walk and starting to run, essentially, because
Oh,
I
wow.
honestly this might not be the first run. I always
Yeah.
say it is, but I'm so well aware that my brain was not functioning at this point in time.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it was, because yeah, what, 20? Actually, no, I might, like, I don't remember. Anyways, it was
Doesn't matter.
the first time I remember it feeling like, oh my God, running is awesome, was essentially going for a run from the hospital that I'm not sure I wasn't allowed on, but I was allowed out for a walk, and I was kind of like, I want to go home. So I started running towards home.
Oh,
And it's just that feeling afterwards of obviously eventually being shuttled back to the hospital. It wasn't allowed to go home, but was that feeling afterwards of the endorphins actually coming, and it feeling like I was free, had some freedom and some
yeah.
movement again. And
Mm.
so I do remember that. And I also remember going, I've at this point felt like I'd done a lot of mentally hard things, and I'd
Mm.
pushed through, like, there's no way to gloss over how hard recovering from an eating disorder is, because
Mm.
it's like you've got this phobia or a fear, or you're like, yeah, you've got this phobia that you have to face 6 times a day, every
Yeah.
single day, day after day, and you can't get away from. So it's the amount of times I sat in front of like a tub of yogurt in tears because I couldn't eat it. And so you
Yeah.
had to have those mental battles with yourself. Honestly, it was 24/7 for years,
Mm.
a couple of years in this period. So once I'd gotten through all that, it was kind of like this whole feeling of going, I've done mentally things harder than I ever thought I could. I've pushed through when I
Yeah.
really thought I couldn't do it. I've gotten to this point mentally, and I wanted a physical challenge that kind of matched
Hmm.
that. I wanted to go, well, how can I now use this physically? Because I'm a very physical being. I love
Yeah.
moving. I need to be moving and those sorts of things. So, in my head at that point in time, the hardest thing I thought a human could possibly do was run a marathon. I
Hmm.
didn't know that ultras existed. I didn't know that Ironmans existed. Like, I'm kind of thankful I knew nothing bigger existed in the world. um, because who knows where I would have set my sights otherwise. But yeah, I essentially just said about going, I'm going to train for a marathon. Obviously, that raised a lot of red flags for everyone around me.
You're just obsessing
But
about something else.
exactly. But it was I made the sort of promise to myself that I was going to train for a marathon and run a marathon, and in the process not lose an ounce of weight. Um,
Oh.
so I was very I was very strict with myself, and there was a very long process of trying to teach myself to run without it ever becoming a compensatory mechanism or anything like that, and teach myself to fuel not just for life but for running as well. And yeah, it was messy, but I got it done. And like it was what 20 November 2015, I think I ran my first marathon. So yeah, I think it must have been
How old were you then?
2020. I turned damn 20, I think. 21.
You were 2021 when you did that?
Yeah, 20 or 21. And so yeah, from there I kind of just I'd caught the bug by that point, because I did do a half marathon in the lead up to that, and I did sort of build my way
Yeah.
up. My training was as dumb as it gets. Um, but at this point I was like, I'd found my feet a little bit again, and I was back I did some PT study. So I got my PT certificate, and I was back working as a swim instructor, I think. Like there was life was a little bit more stable for me.
Yeah.
The struggles definitely weren't over. But yeah, I ran that first marathon, and yeah, really caught the bug. That was on a trail called the Lilydale to Warburton Rail Trail. So lo and behold, I didn't even know it was kind of a trail road half marathon, a marathon sort of thing, because it did go up and over Mount Evelyn. So probably some foreshadowing there of what was to come. But yeah, I caught the bug from there, and like my body did revolt on me after that one a little bit, because I went quite far backwards in health and had to have major stomach surgery a few
Oh my
months
gosh.
later. So yeah, I've had my stomach rearranged a little bit with a Nissen fundoplication, which is no small thing. Because
Sounds horrible.
it is pretty horrible, not gonna lie. Because essentially with in the aftermath of my eating disorder and all the medications and the treatments and everything I put my body through, obviously it had been through a lot, and I developed both gastroparesis, which is like mine was temporary, thankfully, but like a mild paralysis of my stomach. But then also I had reflux. So like really bad reflux. And it did get to the point in the lead up to this surgery where I think I'd had to have, I was on a liquid diet. I could only keep down liquids for maybe 2 months in the lead up to the surgery. And by the time I got to the surgery, it was kind of wild, because I was reliant on a feeding tube, but it was because I was trying not to lose weight. I was very much like, I asked for the feeding tube because I'm like, I can feel myself losing weight, and I'm trying to keep down food, and I can't let myself go back there. So yeah, I think I spent a month in total like reliant on that feeding tube. So yeah, essentially the surgery involves having my stomach wrapped around my esophagus to stop food coming back up. And yeah, that was an interesting period again of going, okay, I've kind of done this to I think, I don't know, who knows how it ended up happening, but yeah, then after that, I think it was the day I had the surgery, I signed up for Melbourne Marathon 6 months later to the day.
I was going to say you've got some recovery to do, but no, let's just jump on a marathon training
Well, I
schedule.
wasn't allowed to run for 3 months, I think.
So you're going to have 3 months to train for the Melbourne Marathon.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to have long to train for Melbourne, but I set my sights on raising funds for the Butterfly Foundation for Eating Disorders. So essentially my training was doing fundraisers. I was knocking on doors. I was standing out front of Coles every single weekend selling raffle tickets. Like I went on this big mission to raise as much money as I could. And then that gave me the motivation, obviously, also to put in some more training for the marathon. So it was definitely an interesting marathon, that one, because I kind of went in obviously with lower expectations and going, I'll just try and break 3.5 hours, because I'd run 3 hours 19 for my first one, but I was obviously coming off the surgery and all sorts of things. And my mental health kind of took another hit with all the surgery and everything else going on. So it just so happened that so all of these magnetic seizure treatments, like the seizure treatments happen over a 5-week period. You
Yeah.
have them 3 times a week for 5 weeks. So it's 15 treatments all up. And obviously it's no small thing because you're going under an anesthetic and having a seizure 3 times a week. So it's a process, and it definitely knocks your body around. Now, Melbourne Marathon happened to be, I think, in week 3 of that.
Well, why not?
So I think it
Oh,
was the
my.
marathon on the Sunday, and then I was in the hospital for the treatment on the Friday, and then the morning after the marathon, I woke up and went back to the hospital to have another seizure. Like,
Wow.
it was, to have another seizure induced, obviously. But yeah, that was a process. But also the marathon, with so much to run for in the marathon, obviously raising money, I managed to raise a bit over $10,000, and it was just this whole
Amazing.
big process that for me brought a new meaning into running, of running for
Mm.
other people and trying to do this whole thing. And it helped, was obviously helping me because it gave me a purpose, and every day became about doing the training that I could manage. And yeah, I very much surprised myself. I took off, and me being me, and not, I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anyone providing guidance whatsoever. So my first 2 marathons were essentially me taking off the line of the sprint and just seeing what happened.
Just
There was no
going.
plan. There was no pacing. There was just, let's go for it. So that Melbourne Marathon, I took off, and I think my first K, like, I'd never even broken 4 minutes for a kilometer in my life at this point. And my first K was about a 4:15.
Oh, wow.
It was, and then I think I pretty much ran a 10K PB. I think I was just very close to my 10K PB, but 15Ks and above, everything was a PB on that day. Because I just took off. And I even remember this one point at Melbourne Marathon that year that about 15Ks, Dad's on his bike, trying to get around the course to say hi to me and see me along the way. And I'm in a pack of guys around me, and the dad's on the side of the road at the 15K marker, and I just scream out to him, Dad, I've never run 15Ks this fast in my life. And one of the guys next to me just looks across at me with this incredulous look and goes, oh my goodness, you are gonna die. And me being me and my competitive little self, I just looked back at him without a word and took off. Like, I was like, no way in hell I'm gonna die. Now, I did die a little bit, but not too much, because I ran, I think, a 3:07.
Oh, my. Well done.
So
That's
yeah, I went in 12-minute PB. Like, it was insane. Like, nothing about it was smart. I didn't take on a single bit of nutrition or fluid or anything.
wow.
So I did everything wrong, but mental power, it does a lot for you. And it was pretty much like a few days after that I got in contact with Tim Crosby, who's you've spoken to, and he's
I
now my
have.
coach, and
Yes.
he's been my coach since. So running changed a
Oh,
lot at that point, because it got a lot more sort of
got
serious in a
structure.
good way, because I had some guidance and some structure, and I slowly became a lot smarter about things. But and I was very willing to be coached. Like, I wanted to
Yeah.
be taught. I wanted to be made better. So anything Tim said went from that point forward, and things changed a lot. And I suppose you would have spoken to Tim about the fact that he's got Crosby Crew.
Yeah.
There's the running crew that he joins. And so obviously from the get-go, I was very open with Tim about all
Yeah.
my struggles, everything I was going through at that point in time. Like, he knew all of it from the get-go. And that's one thing that Tim's always been incredibly good at, not just with myself, but with anyone, of knowing the value of running and a community. So yeah, essentially when I joined on with Tim as a coach, I didn't just get a coach. I was sort of, he completely enveloped me in the Crosby Crew family. So
Yeah.
it was every training session, every long run, I was rocking up with the same people, developing a sort of sense of community. And it was the first, Crosby Crew itself was the first time since everything had sort of happened with my mental health and everything I'd been through. It was the first time I could rock up to a brand new place where no one knew me, and I wasn't the sick girl anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't just known as the person that was going through some shit.
Yeah.
I could kind of rock up and it was just, hey, here's another runner. And I was genuinely just a runner, and it was so freeing. Like, eventually I was in that phase. I feel like a lot of people that have been through similar things, I find you sort of end up in this interim phase where things still aren't great, but they're also so much better. And so many people, I felt the need to tell what was going on because I didn't want any of my little random behaviors, or lo and behold, I have a panic attack around you and you have no idea what's going on. So I was in that phase still of wanting to pre-warn people, but because Crosby Crew, I obviously had Tim there and he was pre-warned, no one else needed to be.
Yeah.
So it was just this it was a very freeing environment for me at that point in time, and things got a lot better from there, thankfully.
Love that. I'm happy to hear that from a personal perspective too, because my 30-year-old daughter moved to Melbourne last year, and I've had her on the podcast because she decided to get fit.
Yeah.
And she did run as a kid because I used to drag her along to running club, but she hadn't run, through her 20s really.
Yeah.
And then at 29, she moved to Melbourne and she decided to get fit and went to the gym. And then she saw I was doing the 100 I told you about at the beginning of the year. And she decided, oh, I'm just going to start running and I'll do the 50. I'm not going to do a marathon. I'm just going to skip. And she did. And she got I think she was the fastest in her age group and other. Anyway, she's taken on running. Lives in Melbourne, taken on running now pretty fanatically.
Yep.
like most people who come on the podcast to talk about it and sort of pick it up. So, but the point of the story is that she has just joined the Crosby Crew. So hopefully this week, I think tomorrow might be. At the time of recording this, I think she'll be going along to her first session with a friend of hers, and hopefully that'll become also. That's what I'm hoping for her. Like you said, like a bit of a running community around her.
100%. And because when I first joined, they had organized runs like 6 days a week. So there was I didn't always go to all of them, but if I was having a rough week, I was rocking up to all 6 of those runs, and all of a sudden I had a place to rely on and some structure to go back to and those sorts of things again. So it's pretty powerful what any running group can do for you. So, and give you, like, everyone needs community. Obviously not everyone finds it in running. There is lots of other areas you can find sort of your people, but I was very happy to find my people in Crosby Crew at that point. So
a lot of people on the podcast, they'll say, I started running to lose weight. Like, that's quite common. You kind of mentioned that earlier. But they tend to stay running because of the community. The people that whether it's park run or a run group or whatever, it's the people that they surround themselves with. That's why they stay running, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Like the people you meet, but also just the feeling of the empowering feeling it sort of gives you to be able to be doing doing something that feels very, very powerful and worthwhile with your body. I think that there's nothing, you can't underestimate the power of that for everyone. So it's cool.
So where have you taken your running since you joined the Crosby Crew? And Tim, tell me a bit about what your running did after that. It sounds like you've been on a bit of an adventure. Plus, I've had a look at your Instagram.
Oh yeah, it's definitely become an adventure, a very unexpected adventure in the end. But like I approached Tim at the very beginning, telling him that I wanted to do ultra marathons because I think I straight up approached him and said, I can't run fast, but I can run far. Was my mental approach to running at that point in time. And Tim, being Tim and the very wise man that he is, kind of looked at me and went, nope, you're not, like, because I was 20, I think I must have been 21 at this point, maybe 22.
Yeah.
21. And he kind of looked at me and went, no, you're young. There's no way you're doing an ultra. You're doing, I think the first thing he trained me up for was like a 1500. Like, he bared it right back. Actually, no, a 10K. A 10K was the first thing that he let me do. And that was actually a very funny experience because I just run Melbourne in 3:07. And so Tim kind of looks at my PBs and he goes, you should be able to run with the marathon you've just run. You should definitely be able to run a 10K in under 40 minutes. And I'd run a couple of 10K races and things. And to me, anyone breaking 40 minutes was superhuman. Like, they were insane. They're the really good runners. I'm not one of those people. And so I didn't even have the heart, because Tim said it very matter of fact, is like, you should be able to break 40 minutes for 10K. And you're going to do with the Christmas run around Albert Park Lake. You're going to do the Christmas run. I'm going to have people in front of you to pace you, and you're going to break 40 minutes. And it was all very matter of fact. And I was very new with Tim. And so I didn't have the guts to actually speak up and say, by the way, I've never run 1K under 4 minutes. Like, I've never tried, but I've also never done it. So how do I run 10
Wow.
of them back to back? But lo and behold, yeah, I run that race, and it was definitely the first time I learned what it is to push your limits in running,
Yeah. Mm.
because yeah, I did have Bron and a couple of the other South Melbourne runners in front of me pacing me around at 4 minute Ks, and I was just like, don't look at the watch, don't look at anything. You're just staring at the person in front of you and trying to run. And I got to 8Ks, and I'm a kid that grew up with pretty bad asthma, and it was very much exercise induced and all these sorts
Yeah.
of things. And at about 8Ks of this run, I was working so hard and I sounded so loud, and I was like, nope, I'm having an asthma attack. I must be having an asthma attack. And I started panicking, and
Oh
like
no.
it was just this whole process of like trying to hold on to Bron and but panicking at the same time at 8K. But then I managed to sort of calm myself down. Like I wasn't having an asthma attack. I was just working hard. Like
Yeah.
there was nothing about it that I should have been panicking about. But yeah, I managed to stick on to Bron, and we did need to pick it up, I think, in the last K, but Bron was there yelling at me saying, you can do it, you can do it. And then we get to the finish, and I'm sprinting down the finish tape, and I kid you not, I tripped over the finishing timing mat.
Oh,
But I was fine. I tripped over it because I tripped over it at 39:58.
go you.
So,
That's amazing.
so it didn't matter.
Awesome.
I was stoked on life at that point.
Oh, I
So
love
yeah,
it.
that was my first thing with Tim. But yeah, he taught me how to train. He taught
Hmm.
me sort of how to run. He taught me the ins and outs of everything I was doing up to that point was kind of taken out of Runner's World magazine,
Yeah.
or I saw
Yeah.
someone else do it, so I copied it, or I got injured and so I'd get on the rowing machine in the gym for 80 Ks a week. Like it was
Yeah.
wild. There's nothing smart about it. But yeah, he taught me how to train. He put me in, yeah, on the track, 1500s, 5Ks. I spent a while there doing 3K steeples. I really
Yeah.
liked that one. And yeah, so I think the philosophy Tim always said at the start was he didn't know what I was going to be good at, so I had to try everything, and I was more than willing to try
Oh,
everything. So that was because that was what 2016. So I spent all of 2017 just running road circuit, cross
yeah.
country, all sorts of things, and I was doing decently enough for myself for sure. Like by 2017, like I was running quite a lot faster than I already thought I ever would.
Hmm.
So I was over the moon. I was like, sweet, this is awesome. Like you've gotten me fitter. So I just blindly would follow anything. But come 2018, early 2018, what would it have been? March, I was doing steeplechase. And the state championships for steeplechase were like the first weekend in March or something.
Yeah.
And it was 1 week later, there was this trail race called Warburton Trail Festival.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was obviously training for the state champs, but I just then saw someone, Dion, actually, the owner of or the race director of Bellarine Sunset Run, which was a look, it's technically a trail half marathon, so probably, but it's a gravel trail kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
It's similar to the Lilydale Warburton Rail Trail. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing technical about it. You're just beside the water, and instead of being on a footpath, you're on gravel
Yeah.
sometimes. Um, but yeah, he flagged the fact that Warburton Trail Fest, the Donna Double, they were putting up a 1 year Solomon sponsorship for the winner. And pretty sure he just contacted me and went, hey, I think you're kind of crazy enough to do this, and to win this. And yeah, essentially because it had it was, I think it was worth about $5,000 in total, the prize. So I sent it off to Tim and I'm like, hey, it's 1 week after states. Like, I don't really need to train for it, but can I go try? And he said, yeah. He was like, it's after state championships, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, off you go. Go see how it happens. And I won. So yeah, I
That's
went from,
amazing.
in 1 week, I went from doing a steeplechase at state champs. And I think I did manage to come second, I think. But then a week later, was I second that year or was that the year I was lower down? Doesn't matter. I ran my PB in the steeple, and then yeah, 1 week later,
You're a sponsored
rocked up
athlete.
to rocked up to Donna Double, and yeah, to be fair, it's not a tame one to start with. Like it's 20K with 1200 up and 1200 down, and I I'm thankful for my upbringing that I don't have much of a self-preservation gene when it comes to downhill running. I absolutely love it, and I don't
I
care
do
if I'm going
too,
to
but
fall.
I got a knee thing now. That
Yeah,
happened after that
bummer.
recently, a recent one. Yeah, I went, oh,
Yeah, bummer,
just
bummer.
looking
Because
after it
yeah,
at the
I
moment. Mm.
I think in that 10K descent, I honestly would have fallen about
Yeah,
15 times. That
yeah.
was where I came up with my theory that just keep falling towards the finish line.
It's
Like you have to fall forwards. That's fine.
kind of
You're
like
still getting
controlled
closer.
falling. We've got one
Yeah,
here called,
exactly.
is it I always forget what it's called, triple top, which is three
Yeah,
mountains in a row
yeah,
up, yeah, here in Tassie. And
yeah. I'm doing that this year.
I love it. The last bit is a big scree thing, which probably goes for a
Yeah,
K, but really big boulders and
yeah.
small ones and big ones together. And even when I'd already turned 50, I think. So I got the first old person because
Oh, nice.
but mostly because I had no fear going down there because I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
control felt. And I hate
yeah.
heights too,
Exactly.
but I just grabbed hold of trees and whatever. Anyway, it was lovely. So I understand that feeling, that feeling of
Yeah,
using gravity and just going for it. It's beautiful.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
freeing. It's a freeing.
Very, very much so. So
What did you do with
yeah, that
how
was.
did it work to be a sponsored? How did that go?
Oh, it was honestly the most wild month of my life, I think, when it came to like good months. Because I was at uni, I just started uni in
Mm,
nursing at this point. So I'd finally made it back to Melbourne Uni studying not studying nursing, sorry, biomedicine.
yep.
Um and yeah, like I was all of a sudden being contacted and sent sort of the, contracts, and it was very much just a hey, here's a year of sort of some gear supports
Yeah.
and those sorts of things. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't what you would ever call a professional contract
Yeah.
at all. Like it was sponsored. It was a incredible opportunity for me as a 21, 22 year old,
Yeah.
23 by this point, but 23-year old. But yeah, I grabbed it with both hands. And obviously, having done that, Tim went, "Oh, you actually did well there. The Australian Mountain Running Championships are in 4 weeks. You want to go?" And they were down in Tassie. Um,
Oh,
so they were an all up. It was an all uphill year, and it was literally just from the bottom to the top of Kununyi in
yeah.
10K.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was
Yeah.
like 1,400 climbs in 10K.
Yeah.
Um, and
I've
I
done the
went,
Mount Kenyani
"What
run
is
that they
this?"
have here now as well, which is, yeah, I've done the
Yeah, yeah.
25, which is, yep.
Yeah, well, it was
Mm.
straight up. It was honestly, it was so steep. I was like, what is this? But we yeah, so I put in a very short, sharp 4 week block for that. And here's me going, oh my gosh, it's an Australian championship. Like I was all over the shop. But it was so much fun. And then yeah, I went down there and I managed without it. Like Miriam Dowie was there, and I knew
Yeah.
how fast she was, and I know how good of a runner she is. And obviously she's from Tassie, so I was like, oh, like I'm not going to be able to beat Miriam, but managed to pull that off somehow. It
Well,
still was one of the races that I think like took so much to get there. But yeah, within the space of 4 weeks, I went from trying to just run steeplechases as a kind of, I suppose, like a fun runner in a way, to then
yeah.
going, I was sponsored by Solomon and the Australian mountain running champ. Like it was a big transition, because then obviously I'd won my spot in the world champs team later that year in Andorra. So
Oh my
I'd booked a
gosh.
ticket to the world champs. And yeah, like mountain running is not, and especially back then, it's a much bigger sport.
Mm.
There's much more competition in Oz now than there
Yeah.
was back in 2018.
Yeah.
Like it was not a big race. It was a very small race. There was definitely not a huge field there, but there was still some incredibly good runners there. And like at the time, it just felt like everything. Like it was just so cool. So yeah, that was 2018. All of a sudden, just became all about getting to world champs in Andorra. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
everything since then has been it's been a bit of a ride.
So you obviously went to the
Yes,
World Champs and you did that. And then since then you've just continued to, is that your favorite, like mountain running, what it was called, trail running? Is that what you prefer to do? Or
no,
are you
so yeah,
still steeple chasing now?
no,
What does
no,
it look
not
like?
steep. I did do one more season of steeplechase, but I went to nationals the next year at the steeplechase, and
Hmm.
1 week after that did the New Zealand mountain running champs, and ended up with a stress fracture.
Oh,
And
ouch.
we think that the steeplechase was a major contributor to that, because
Oh.
It happened to be in the landing leg for my steeple. So I haven't done that since. Tim all of a sudden went, nope, you're not touching it again, because it's not where I'm best at anyway. So like I wasn't bad, but also wasn't never going to be a top level steeplechaser, that's for sure. So yeah, since then it's been a journey of trying to figure out what works best for me. Obviously, I've had some highs and lows with injury, but I love the longer stuff. I love putting in the work. When my body manages to stay healthy, I feel amazing off very high mileage, and I feel amazing. Just the more I run, the better I feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm someone that from very early on has been working towards the ultra distances and the much longer races. But I'm also on the journey of trying to figure out how to make that happen at the level I want it to, because I'm always out there to try and win these things, but healthfully and sustainably. Because I did finally, like I went and did Golden Trail World Series, which is mostly shorter events. I've done a few 50, 60Ks, and my body handled a lot of those fine. But then I got super excited and did an 85K at the start of last year, and that went amazingly, and it's probably one of my better results to date. But I was again injured a week later, so it's since then it's been a journey of figuring out where I'm best at. So, and I still don't think I found it. I honestly think I am going to be better at things I haven't touched yet, like the 100K distance and those sorts of things. That's where my brain and my body feel most comfortable, is doing the sort of training that is going to lead to good ultra distance races. But I love the competitive and the adrenaline side of the shorter stuff, where you're trying to go as fast as you can on this sort of terrain, and it's short, it's sharp. You get to do plenty of them in a year. They're like, I say short and sharp, they're like 2 to 3 hour races still, but and the trail side of things, they're short and sharp. And I like the challenge of those. I find those super challenging but rewarding, and then I'm working my way slowly into the longer distances. And for all I know, I could be currently sitting here thinking I'm going to be good at them and not be good at them. I don't know. I have no proof yet. But yeah, I've got many years to come, hopefully. That's the idea.
What's it more important to you? Is it being good at them? Like, is that because you say that a lot, and you talked about competition a lot, that's a real driver for you, do you think? Like being able to be good at whatever distance it turns out to be, or at least for that period, because that'll change too as you get older.
Oh, it's all going to change. And I'm a forever, I want to reach my potential. Now, I'm a very realistic, my body has a lot of stuff going on, and it very much revolted and didn't like running to begin with. I've had to teach myself to run. I've had to make my body okay with the fact that I like running. So I'm very much aware that I'm a realist in terms of where my limits may lie, but also going, I love in life the feeling of striving for something that you're not sure you can achieve. Like that for me is what drives me. And I also, being the competitive beast that I am, I love leading a race. I love being in a battle with other people like that. Don't get me wrong, I also love the easy long runs with friends or by myself or anything like that. But for me, what I love about races and events is the fact that I get to race, and the fact that I get to sort of battle with other people and really push myself. So I would still be doing it even if I wasn't good. That's for sure. Like even if I wasn't at the front of these races, I'd still be running and pushing myself. I'd just obviously be battling for whatever position I can battle for. But I would 100% also be the person that I am, even if I'm back in 100s, 200s, 300s. I'd be trying to sprint past that person on the finish line.
You want to get past like 99.
Exactly. Like I would be pushing, because that's who I am, and that's what I love, that feeling of when your body's responding and you're pushing really hard and able to, like, the release of endorphins, adrenaline, whatever it is. So I'm actually consider myself incredibly lucky that when I push and I go hard, I am often at the front or closer to the front of these races, and therefore can sort of make a living out of it and those sorts of things. That's a very, very privileged space to be that I didn't think my body would be capable of, and I'm forever amazed that it is.
Pretty incredible. When you describe all the things you've gone through, it's pretty incredible, isn't it? Like, wow, that's awesome.
It's a bit of a, every time I stop to think about it, it's a bit of a shock to the system. But I think I've essentially just gotten to where I am through every single opportunity that's been put in front of me, I've grabbed with both hands. And that isn't necessarily easy, but I've been given a perspective in life that makes it a bit easier to make that choice, because I was more than happy to send myself broke, or to like, I'm the person that when I'm deep in a training thing, I will say no to your birthday. I will say no to your wedding. I will say no to everything that isn't going to help me run the fastest. And yes, that can look quite obsessive and all those sorts of things, but it's also just me prioritizing things and seeing what sort of makes me happy. I'm not good at socializing. I'm not good when I'm around groups. Like, I'm that person that you put me in a group of people and I'll love it for a little while, but I need to kind of go decompress and have my own space and time to actually be okay again after that. So yeah, running suits me really well in that way, in a lifestyle. But yeah, I've always dreamed big in everything I've done. Like, at school, I wanted to be the best at math and the best at drama and the best. Like, I'm that kid. Like, I used to hate the fact that I was like that for a little while there. I went through this whole period of trying to go, no, I don't care, it's stupid. Like, I know what I don't need a battle for this, and I don't need to be competitive. And now I've reached the point of going, no, it's okay. My brain is competitive. It's never not going to be, and it's okay that it's that way. We're good.
And I'm over it. It's fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
You mentioned you went back to uni.
Yes.
Have you finished?
Oh,
what are you doing? Tell me.
I am, finally. I started full-time, or mostly full-time at uni, but then over the years, with traveling to Europe for racing, and as running has taken off a bit more, uni took more of the back seat. So I took 6 years to do a 3-year degree. But yes,
Sounds
as of
right.
December last year, I have finally graduated my Bachelor of Biomedicine, thankfully. So no longer have that in the background, which it's an interesting thing, because when I first started uni, I wasn't at all sponsored. I wasn't doing anything to do with running. Running was not the dream. I was actually looking at maybe becoming a researcher, like an academic, because I love studying and delving into the human body. But I really didn't like the combination of trying to train and compete while studying, because I felt like each of them took away from each other, because I wanted to be all in on whichever one I was doing at that point in time, and I wasn't able to be. So I'm very glad that that's over, because didn't enjoy the process of doing both.
It's a bit like having two favorite things, but there is an overlap that does work, I think. But I think the difference for the running for you is that competitive side. Like, the running is really, really good at supporting your academic achievements, because it clears your brain and it does all that neuroscience 100%. Stuff that you know about.
Yeah.
But then when you take it not up that other notch, which I guess is what you've just described to us, that world that you're in, where you're competing at such a high level, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of you're just striving. There's a lot of stuff you're trying to strive to get, and so that it's running is a little different on some levels for
the right person, though. Like, I know a lot of elite athletes that will study or will actually really like that balance of, obviously study is quite stationary, and you can sort of recover while doing it, but yeah, it exhausted me. Like, it didn't, the balance of it didn't work, because for me, I'm best when I'm not training hard. I kind of need to have something that I can completely switch off to actually recover. And my brain, every single little rabbit hole that I could delve deeper into the human body and learn more, it would just go down and really want to delve deep into. And I almost feel like when I'm studying, I'm almost using more energy than when I'm running sometimes. Like, my brain works too quick for myself.
That's amazing.
Like, I can't write things down. I have to sort of dictate, because my hand can't work fast enough to my brain. So it's a bit of a challenge. Definitely a challenge to navigate. But look, we've all got to, you've sort of got to just learn how to your own little brain and body cope with the world and deal with it, right? So
exactly. And so are you doing anything with your degree at the moment, or are you just a professional runner? And tell me what your life looks like now that you've finished studying. You're still running like crazy.
Yeah, now that I've finished studying, yes, thankfully. So I am very thankful to have a lot of very good support in running. So I am a professional runner at this point, and that's pretty much my life. So my life is first and foremost is based around the training that I have to do. Obviously, when I'm not injured. When I'm injured, I try and find a bunch of other hobbies and things to jump back into. But yeah, like I managed to still keep myself far too busy. So I have the training, and that's the most part. I do some online run coaching because I find that's the super rewarding way of giving back to the running community and sort of helping other people on their own journey in the way that Tim's helped me. So I
I'll put a
actually
link as well.
I love coaching. One of my favorite things. And then I obviously still have my PT certificate. I maybe work 4 hours to 5 hours on a good week with my lovely PT clients, some in person, some online. So I have a few little things there, and helping out with a run club called Her Run that's just started up, which is a pretty incredible group of
Awesome.
African Muslim women that are getting into running, and I'm teaching them the love. So yeah, but beyond all that, I've now got my own podcast with a few friends called the Peak Pursuits podcast that we've just started up to sort of bring some love to the top end of trail running and how cool it is all taken off, and covering race results and those sorts of things. But yeah, my days, I managed to feel like I still drop the ball on all the things I used to drop the ball on with study, which is cleaning around the house and doing all the life things that we have to do. I need to get a lot better at managing those things, because left to my own devices, I'm a bit of a chaotic being, but my partner is incredibly good at putting up with me, so I'm very thankful for him. But yeah, life is pretty, honestly, the best it's ever been is this year. Like, even though I still was injured, and even though I'm only just getting back into running, like, this is definitely the most settled I've felt in sort of life, in who I am, in what I'm doing, and I'm very, very grateful for where I am. And so not I always say, like, I never get comfortable, because I always know that there's so many things that can happen, and things can change in a minute. But that not being comfortable is more being grateful and being just aware of what I have, and not taking anything for granted. So I really try and soak up the professional athlete lifestyle for what it is, because it's not going to last forever. I know that much. So I'm milking it for what it's worth while I've got it. And I'm only a month away from another 3 month stint in Europe. So I get to go gallivanting about the mountains and the world again. And living it up.
What an awesome lifestyle you have. That's fantastic.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So,
What are you most excited about coming up?
well, so this year I'm very much treating like a consolidation year, because I had like pretty much a 16-month or a 12 solid month injury period for 2023, 2024. So start of this year. So things didn't exactly start to plan. And I'm very thankful that this year, at least, I missed out on World Champs last year. I had a very, very heartbreaking day where I got the call to say I'd made the team, and the call to say that my MRI showed a stress fracture within an hour of each other. It was
that's awful.
Great. Such good timing. So it's that next year is the next World Champs. So that's probably what I'm next most excited for, because I love having this great big goal in the future to work towards. So I suppose everything this year and the start of next year will be working towards that World Champs in Spain in September 2025. That being said, obviously, I'm still going to give my all to the races I do go to this year, because they're all sort of that learning the craft, getting better at what I do, stepping stone into being hopefully as good as I can be for the Oz team. Obviously, I've still got to make the Oz team. So the first step is making that team, which is getting harder and harder every year, which I love, because the battles I get to have with some of these incredible Aussie women are so much fun. That's and seeing the sport rise. So first battle is going to be making that team. But that's kind of the main aim. And then I try not to get too excited for when I do finally get to step up to sort of that 100K above distance that Tim has been very, very much trying to calm me down from and hold me back until he thinks I'm ready. So that's probably not going to come until sort of 2026 and beyond. But it's kind of feels like I've got goals for the next like 10 years in this sport. So
That's
it's
awesome.
I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, and I've had a lot of a lot of challenges chucked my way body wise and injury wise, but
Yeah.
for as long as my body will let me go, I'll keep going. So
I always ask on the podcast how long you think you'll run for.
ever.
Excellent. Well,
Forever.
there's no wrong answer, by the way, but but that's the right answer.
as long as as long as my body can, I'll be running. And I can probably guarantee I'll be one of those people trying to compete for masters
Yeah.
records in races
Yeah.
or whatever, or age
Oh,
groups or things, because I think there's just so much value in knowing how to push yourself, because it helps you push yourself in so many other
mm.
areas of life too.
Oh, it's that's so true.
Um, yeah, I have utmost respect for all the masters athletes out there still kicking it and showing what you can do at ages that people thought you couldn't do stuff. So, yeah, that'll be me.
No, I used to always think, oh, it'll be fine. I'll be the fastest in another few decades when everyone else stops running. But they haven't stopped running. A lot of those people who were,
Yeah,
who
I
were
know.
faster than me. I'm
Everyone will
like,
keep
they're
going.
still running. Because I've had them on my podcast. I need to tell them, I think you should stop now because yeah, you're getting a bit old. Only so that I can be the fastest. But
And
anyway. No, I had that period when I was at school because I was quite good at running at school in the short distances, but I lost that as an adult. Just became a normal runner, the middle of the pack. But I love it. Um, is If you hadn't picked up running, what do you think your life would be missing? I.e., what is your life like from a positive perspective? What's your life given you because running's in it?
oh, I'd be missing almost everything it feels like. I'd be like, I suppose I would have found there's definitely a lot of things I think you can find in other areas. Like as I alluded to before, like you can
Mm,
find communities, you can find like-minded people in a whole bunch of areas, but there's just something about running that yeah, I think I'd still be missing half my mental health. I think
yeah,
like the biggest thing it's the best stabilizer I've found
yeah.
for mood and life. So I think
Do you have to go a
the main thing.
distance? Sorry to interrupt. Like, do you have to go a distance for that mental health benefit to kick in? Or does it depend what's
I
going on in your life, depending on how far you need to go
think
to?
no, I think it definitely depends what's going on, and I am the person that likes the longer, easier days out. Like give me whenever Tim lets me off the reins, I'm going for 8 to 10 hour runs in the mountains because all of a sudden I'm not on a training plan, so I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
But and those days out, but um, yeah, for me it is the distance and movement. But then again, depending on the mood, like if I'm angry, I want a track session. So
Mm. Yeah,
like,
I know
give
that
me the
feeling.
short, yeah, give me the short, sharp speed at that point. So I think that's the thing. Like running can be as versatile as your moods, right? So that
Exactly.
you have it gives you not just one piece of armor to go up against the world with. It gives you many different
Mm.
types and kinds because I'm also someone that I do love just a very simple run along the road sometimes where you don't have to think about where you're putting your feet and you can let your mind wander, or the super technical rock scramble hikes that just
Yeah.
you get to some pretty cool places, or track sessions. Like it's all good to me. You
Mm.
just need to I need different parts of it at different times, but I think I'm always going to need all of it and love
Yeah.
all of it. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm like, as much as I love trail running the most, and I want all of the other things to facilitate trail running. And
Yeah.
the more technical and longer and steeper, the
Mhm.
better. But I think all of it is good for sure.
It sounds to me like the number of times you've mentioned Tim and what he allows you to do and doesn't allow you to do, that he's provided the structure you were talking about earlier, why you think maybe things sort of fell apart. And one of the reasons is the structure from school was sort of gone and that sort of facilitated helping to get sick and all of that kind of stuff. So it does feel like, you've got that structure too. He helps provide that too in your training for your running, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like obviously, running in itself provides me that structure, but I think I wouldn't be anywhere able to train
Yeah.
anywhere near as smart as I currently do without Tim there, because I'd be chronically doing too much, I'd say. Um, so yeah, I think here's the balance that
Yeah.
keeps it all on a good level.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Um, do you ever listen to anything? I know you obviously run on all different surfaces, as you said, but do you
a
ever
lot.
listen to stuff?
I
Yeah.
like even when I'm racing, if I'm allowed to listen
Okay.
to music, I'm listening to music.
Yeah.
Like when I'm trying to go hard, it's music. When I'm trying to go easy, I'll listen to podcasts. Like obviously
Yeah.
there's always times where you just want nothing in your ears and to enjoy the
Yeah.
surrounds and the sounds around you and those sorts of things. But
Yeah.
I also absolutely love ripping down a trail to music.
Mm.
And music for me also has very similar effects in my brain of being like very calming and very, even if it's really upbeat music, it's like it just takes away a lot of the brain noise.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'll listen to anything and everything while running. It's great.
I love it. Okay. I've already kept you longer than I said I would. So
It's so good.
we can do a part two another time. Because I feel like we could speak for another few hours. However,
Oh, 100%.
Tim, is there anything about running before we wrap? I'm going to ask you for some running tips, so maybe don't throw those in
Yeah, yeah.
there. But is there anything about running in particular that you wanted to talk about that we maybe haven't touched on, or have we been thorough?
Oh, I think we've been fairly thorough. Um, I think it's more just like running always also has downfalls. It'll break your heart. So like in terms of when you're injured and you can't
Yeah,
run because you know the value of
yeah,
running, all of a
yeah.
sudden it's like you're left without things. So I
Right.
think the one thing I've learned along the running journey is that I need to also be okay with not running.
Yeah,
So like I'm in a spot now, and I think I've always been thankfully at the spot of perspective of going, look, if for whatever reason something happened and I could never run again,
yeah,
I would actually be okay. Like I would
yeah.
be fine. We would manage. Running just makes life better. So it's more about for me, the thing that sometimes catches people out with running is it becoming completely reliant on it is also not a good thing.
The identity
And
thing.
so
Mm,
yeah, well, it can be your
mm,
identity. Whether you can run or
mm,
not, it can still be your identity. Like
mm.
even when I'm injured, I identify as a runner trying to get back to
Yeah.
running.
And you coach
Um,
people running. Like it's not like you're like for you
exactly.
in particular, it's part of your who you are,
Yeah,
like
it's part of
community
everything.
and everything. It's not just
But it can still be you can still identify as a runner without it becoming a negative force at any point,
mm,
or running through injuries or running really not coping. Like it's always harder in life when you can't run, but at the
yeah,
same time there's other ways and means to cope with everything and get
yeah.
similar effects. So I think that's definitely a side of running that people everyone becomes aware of at some point,
Mm. Me too.
because it's not the easiest thing on the body, um, but yeah, it's still worth it to sort of push through and get back to where you can be. And yeah, I think the other thing is that no matter how much someone loves running, like I adore running, it doesn't mean that you're motivated every day to go running.
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
so it still is hard. It's still like we do it because it's hard, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I think people can, especially when you're getting started in running, sometimes you can look at others that run and run and run and they can go for so long and it looks so easy that you're like, it's always easy. And yeah, I think it's never always easy, but it does
No.
get a lot easier. So I think a lot of people that fall out with running, as I've seen too many, that they get started and they never get through that initial point,
Yeah.
where it is always hard to begin with. Like it's the same on a return from injury. Every
Mm.
run is hard for a little while.
Yeah.
The magic comes at the point where all of a sudden you've gone for a run and realized that it was easy and it didn't take too
Mm.
much effort. But so many people don't let themselves get back to that point or to that point in the first place. So,
That's so true.
yeah, that's definitely a side of running that I wish I could really, really explain to people before they even get started. Because the number of people I've met that gone, oh, I tried that. It never felt good for me. And I'm like, oh, you just didn't
You were
quite
so
start
close.
right.
You were so
Yeah.
close. I think there's also a lot, like I've talked a lot on the podcast over the years about the fact that our whole life, our culture is about getting comfortable. Because it's about getting
Yep.
that's the whole aim for almost everything we do. We earn money to get a house, to get a television with a remote control, and then and then something else where we don't actually have to do any. Like so much of our life is about getting comfortable and not having
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get out of that comfort zone. So
Oh, the
this
magic, the magic happens. The magic happens when you're uncomfortable. That's for sure.
exactly all of those, sayings that you see everywhere. I think there's a lot of value in those when it comes to around comfort and and what it can
for
give
sure.
us as return and what we learn about ourselves, which I think is a lot of what your story has shown, what it's taught you about yourself, such a powerful thing and maybe would have been harder to get to in other ways. And we can all
Yeah.
run. Pretty much everyone can run in some way. Um,
Yeah.
which I'm a bit one-eyed about running. Everyone should just do it. I don't have any other. That's it. Yeah.
I will say that I've seen obviously a side of the world and a side of society that definitely can't run. And the fact that I have those memories of being surrounded by people that like would either never be able to run in their life or in a period of life where running is not going to be a good thing for them, and that
Yeah,
just forever makes me
that's
more
true.
thankful that I can do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm forever remembering that not everyone can do this.
Yeah.
And most people can, and a lot more people than that don't do it that can do it. But yeah, there is definitely a section of society that just forever reminding myself to be grateful that I can do this.
Yeah, that's a bit of perspective. Sim, before we wrap up, I ask everybody for some tips for beginner runners. So if somebody came to you and said, I want to start running, which of course, as a coach, you are well able to provide some tips. How would you suggest they get started if they're beginner?
So for complete beginners, I always try and tell them that you want to ease your body into running. Like every time you sort of get started with running, you want your body to feel like it's easy to keep going. Like your body can do it again and again and again. So whatever level you start out at shouldn't be hard yet. Because you've got to, when you think about it, running, it's a lot of work for the body. It's a lot of pounding on the body. So you don't want to shock your system into thinking it's horrible, and even your mind, your body, anything. So like I taught my mum to run when she was late 50s. Like I got her started into running, and it's a similar thing when beginner runners sometimes, or very often, I did this too. You go out, you try and run for as long as you can until you die, and then you walk it in. But that's like worst way to go about it. That's definitely not what I recommend. So every single person that comes to me as a brand new runner, I've coached quite a number of them and gotten them moving. It's always walk run. It is not just go out and run for as long as you can. It is, my blanket is for at least the first 2 weeks of someone learning to run. I only give them 20 minutes at a time of 30 seconds of running, 2 minutes of walking. And they look at it on paper and they go, but that's so easy. And I'm like, that's the point. At all points along the beginning of a running journey, it should be easy. You've got to condition your tendons. You've got to condition your muscles, your bones, everything to be able to handle this. And that takes a long time. So as long as a runner, or as long as someone getting into running is willing to go on the long journey with me of going, it's 2 weeks of 20 minutes every second day of 30 seconds run, 2 minute walk, every second to third day, whatever fits for them. And that only, like, it probably takes 6 months for me to get someone to a straight up 30-minute run.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And
amazing.
That is because I'll take 2 weeks at each block of walk run. And even I'm still walk running them when we get to 4 minutes run, 1 minute walk, 6 minutes run, 1 minute walk. I'm just forever trying to have that break in there to remind their body that, hey, no, it's all good. We got this, and it's easy. I want them to get, like, you can, especially as we get further into it, you get tired and those sorts of things. But I just don't want a beginner runner to get to the end of any run going, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Because you don't want, that's not what you want. That's not the relationship I want your brain to have with running. So yeah, I think obviously for more active people that are used to sports of any kind, it's a much shorter process. So it depends. Like sometimes it's anywhere from that 3 to 6 months, depending on how active the person is beforehand. But my biggest thing is start easy, start short, start with a walk run, 30 seconds at a time. Like it's the equivalent of doing 30 seconds of hopping or skipping or anything. Like it's hard. And it still takes, like, even 20 minutes of 30 seconds on, 2 minutes off. Like it's multiple reps of skipping in the gym that's still going to make you sore and tired, and have some conditioning effect for the body. And then, once someone's built that base, I tell them that, like, look, just please put up with a boring phase to get your body conditioned to then do the fun stuff. Because the fun stuff does come. But then Yeah, I suppose the only other thing I'd say, like, I don't think beginner runners need to think too much about anything but that slow conditioning
Hmm.
of getting their body used to it. But the sooner you can start to incorporate any form of sort of strengthening weak areas, and
Hmm.
that doesn't need to be gym sessions all the time. If someone's especially not used to the gym, sometimes
Yep.
I teach them running
Yep.
drills, things like lunges, like skipping, like those sorts of
Hmm.
things. It's too many beginner runners, and I was the same. Too many, like even recreational runners will think that's only for the elites, or like that's only for the people that are trying to run
The
really
ones that
fast.
prance
But
around, you
yeah,
know.
exactly. And you don't need to do all the really fancy plyometric drills that a lot of us do. Like, you can achieve the same thing just with some normal leg swings and
Yeah.
skipping and those sorts of things. Like, they have a lot of value long term, because at some point, I think every runner runs into a spot where you've got one muscle that's not keeping up with the rest of the
Yep.
muscles, or a joint that's not happy. And the earlier you can sort of get on top of that, I think it smooths the process out for a very long time to come.
Yep. Very
For
useful.
that. So I hope that made sense.
Yeah, and it totally did. That was awesome. Thank you. Well,
Good.
Sim, thank you for being on. Don't jump off straight away, but a massive
It's all
thank
good.
you for being on the podcast. What an inspirational journey you've had. I'm sure that's going to inspire so many people. I really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
you
you.
being vulnerable and sharing it because, yeah, like I said, that's when I think we learn the most when we hear stories from other people that, those real stories from the heart. So I really appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
And good luck.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. Send me a message on Facebook or on the website and let's do it. I also wanted to let you know that I've created an email list so you won't miss any podcast episodes. You'll find details in the show notes and on the Fit Mind, Fit Body website, along with a bunch of resources on mindful running. They'll help you to get and stay mentally and physically fit. And I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you would leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running and ultimately to improve their life. See you soon.